You're listening to the Mansell Show exclusively on Spotify and YouTube. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mansell Show. As always, I'm your host, Mansell, and I've got a podcast or a vodcast, whatever you want to call it. Either way, to me, this is a podcast dedicated to those who are fans of the game and those who are experts and just kind of a little bit of everything for everyone. Just so that this way everybody's satisfied. We're in season 3. Welcome to season 3. This is season 3 of the podcast. We haven't done this in a while. I know it's been quite a while since we've done it, but I am excited for what you guys are going to see here. We got a lot going on, a lot planned, and I may have just accidentally leaked this on Twitch, live on stream. If you haven't seen that clip will definitely be coming. Just wait for it. It's going to be very, very bad. Just wait. It's terrible. But besides that point, we're going to be airing episodes every Monday and Friday on Spotify and YouTube on the Mansell Show channels. Go check them out there if you want to keep up with any updates, anything going on with streams or stuff. Keep an eye out on X and keep an eye out on Instagram. That being said, we're here to talk about one thing today, and that is the 2026 NFL Draft. A lot went down, a lot of wild stuff that I didn't even predict happening. Everything went crazy on that draft immediately from just the first pick alone. So we will go into every detail of what's happened. We're going to talk about top performers, teams who drafted well, teams who didn't draft well, some sleeper picks you guys should keep an eye on this upcoming season and into the mini camps. And also at the end, we have a feel good moment of the weekend that we want to kind of talk about and touch upon that I think is really important that we, really fixate on. I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of great moments. I will see you all in the next segment. Let's get to it. Now, let's first talk about the 2026 NFL Draft, where a lot really did go down, but we really want to get into the details of what exactly happened. Because when I'm saying this is craziness, I really, really mean it. This is insanity. Like, not even exaggeration. This is insanity. And here's why. Everything felt normal at first. You see David Bailey go, you see Mendoza go, and you're like, the only guy who was maybe iffy there was maybe Bailey because there was talk about Reese. But then that completely changed when we get to the Cardinals at 3 and they pick Jeremiah Love, which, listen, there was a lot of smoke about him going to the Cardinals in the last week or so before the draft, but I didn't buy into any of it. I didn't think they would be that confident to take him at that spot. I thought that would be a completely terrible decision, given that they had so many holes on the roster. And in this case, they may have proved me right. And here's why. Jeremiah Love goes to the Cardinals at 3. You already have a really full running back room. There's no need to really invest anywhere else. We look everywhere else. They could use another receiver. They could definitely bulk up the offensive line. They don't have a quarterback they can necessarily rely on. But don't worry, they got Carson Beck in the 3rd round. The fact I'm shaking my head should be enough to tell you that was just not a good choice. I think Carson's great. He's not going to be a starter. He will not be a quality starter in the NFL. But I do think he has potential, but he needs the right coaching staff, and I don't think this coaching staff's going to get it out of him. They also could have used help on the defense, bulk up the line, get some help in the secondary, add somebody else at the safety spot, linebacker, something else other than a running back. But they picked the running back. And yes, best talent in the draft, best talent on the board. I can agree with that statement. But you have to also balance out, when is it a need? When is your need more important than the talent? Because when it comes to drafting on the big boards, it's like you got to kind of find a way to balance that. Because at some point you may need a wide receiver, but if this guy that's a linebacker has been on the board for the last 15 picks who should have went 15 picks ago, you're going to want to take that linebacker because you're getting a guy that's going to be on your team guaranteed for the next 5 years at least. So I think in their cases, we're looking at this and we're understanding that from that perspective, yes, that was a good move. But their needs were way more important than that. I hate the fact that that's the truth. But that's what we need to understand about the Cardinals here. This is not just they picked it because this guy, they needed a running back. They needed something else. But they went with the best talent, and you can't hate on the fact they picked the best talent. But it shook up the rest of the draft because then you get the Titans at 4, who probably would have taken Love, and they took Carnell Tate. And then the Giants get Arvell Reese at 5 when he was supposed to get Sonny Styles potentially. And then you get the Chiefs trading up to 6, and they go get Mansell, who they could have had at 9. Then you get to 7, you see the Commanders then get Sonny Styles, who wasn't even probably thought of to be on their board at that level. But then you get to the Commanders at 7, and you see that like this late in the game, it's a shocker even in the first place that he's there at 7. You get to 8, the Saints take Jordan Tyson. You get to 9, the Browns take Spencer Fano. And then you get to number 10, and we get the whole, it's just the Giants end up taking Francis Malinois, who nobody had going there, and it just led to a whole mess. So that little move, getting Jeremiah Love to the Cardinals, caused a whole domino effect that affected the whole duration of the first round. And that's what made it so chaotic. So it really wasn't necessarily Mendoza when I was saying it was the first pick of the draft. It was the one after that. It was started with Bailey, because it was a 50-50 between Reese and Bailey. But when you really look through the entire draft as an entirety, guys like Jermon McCoy, who's supposed to be a top 10 pick, maybe a top 15, best corner in the draft, arguably. The news comes out about his knee, the condition of his knee being really bad, and it tanks his draft stock so bad, he ends up going as the top pick in the 4th round rather than going top 15 in the 1st round, because there was no guarantee he was going to play this year, and these teams don't want to pay a guy who's not going to play his rookie year. And I think that definitely played a role in it. And it's something to do with the bone plug in his knee that they're going to have to do a surgery to fix, and he'll need to sit out the whole year for that to properly heal so he could play again. And after that, there shouldn't be a concern. But because they want immediate impact, that's why he was getting passed as well. It sucks that he fell as far, but the Raiders got another really good quality player. And speaking of the Raiders, we should probably get into the teams that had the best performances in the draft. But are the Raiders one of those teams? These top performers, there's many that we could choose from. There's many teams that did really well, or just at least did enough. You got teams that really did not do well. But I want to talk about one specific team first that did the right things at the right time, where they needed to. And the team that I'm going to bring up first is shockingly the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders were excellent. I don't think there is an argument in my mind that the Raiders had a great draft, at least in the first half, I would say. First half, number 1 pick. You get Mendoza. I know I didn't grade it super high for him. I gave like an A- because I felt like it wasn't their number 1 best talent in the draft kind of pick, but they picked exactly what they needed, the number 1 thing they needed. But he wasn't the top talent. So that was the only reason why I didn't give it a perfect A. It would end up being like an A-. But everything else after that, trading Stukes in the 2nd round, the guy who's supposed to be arguably to go in the 1st round. They were arguing that safety was going to go in the 1st round from Arizona, that Stukes was going to go. Instead, they get him in the 2nd round, which is pretty incredible if you ask me. That's incredible. Then you get the 3rd round, Kieran Crawford, get an edge rusher. Very good addressing that position, because edge rushers definitely need, you got to get somebody in there who can work with Max Crosby and develop into something you could have long term. And this guy's great at that. And I think, when you have a guy like Crosby, you make the most of those moments with the young talent you have accessible. So they made some couple great picks right there. They get Trey Zune also in the 3rd round, the center from Texas A&M. And that's another guy, personally, that I really think is super underrated in the class among the interior linemen. He could potentially be a starting center for them. But the difference is they have Linderbaum. They're good. But they have him, at least for insurance purposes, as a backup, or he can be swung out to guard if needed, which that could definitely be in play when it comes to the guard play we saw from the Raiders last season. Was not very good. It just wasn't good, y'all. It wasn't good. And then I talk about the steal in the 4th round, the first pick of the 4th round. They get Jermon McCoy. That's an excellent pick. That is an excellent pick, and I'm so hyped that they got that, because they know that they're not going to be great next year. They know that. It's your first year as a team with new leadership and with new players and a younger roster. You're not going to be great your first year. You don't expect that. 5 wins, 6 wins, that's a win in itself. But as a team, the Vegas Raiders, they let McCoy heal the whole year. He comes back sophomore year. They've got these guys matured. They've got a little experience under their belt. Now they can start cooking and trying to fight in that West Division. And that is where McCoy is going to shine. And that is where the Raiders are making a long-term investment that's going to pay off. And I love that pick for them there in the 4th round. They also don't have to pay him as much, which, for financial purposes, is a lot better. And I dig that for them. And then following that, in the 4th round, they still get one of the most athletic performers among the running backs in the draft, Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas. Yes, they have Genty, but now you get a guy who's got speed in his game and great receiving ability. This is the two-headed monster that they needed, that every team has. The Raiders now have that with Mike Washington and Ashton Genty. With the O-line also improving in turn, that leads to a lot of positive things that could be coming here for the Raiders offense. They're just going to try to identify what is their identity, what do they do well, what do they not do. They're bringing these rookies to fit the game plan they're bringing in. So a lot of great moves that I've enjoyed from the Raiders in this draft have been the ones that I've named. After that, it kind of gets a little shaky, but that's just because they got their guys they like. And that's how every front office is. They've got their guys that they like individually, who experts don't have high on the board, but they met with these players and they like these players. They want these players. And that's what they'll do. They'll draft them. That's how it goes. That's the story of the game. Now, we got the Raiders out of the way. Let me give you another team that I thought did really well. On top of the Raiders, I'm going to stay in the AFC here. Let's talk about specifically the Baltimore Ravens. The work that they did this weekend to help Lamar and get this offense back up and rolling, the same, get some help on the defense too. It's just something monumental. Obviously, I talked about earlier Iowayne going at 14. He was one of my favorite O-linemen in the draft, the top guard by far. And him going there when they needed guard help already, following what happened last year with Lamar, that's already, to me, a great pick. And now their O-line is much more solid, and I love that for them. Following that, 2nd round, they go get Zion Young from Missouri. Zion Young was supposed to be potentially a late first. They get him in the 2nd. They get a really good edge rusher to go with Mike Green already that they have there. And just the options they have necessary on that defense to help create extra pressure is phenomenal. So they now have more flexibility. There are more options to choose from, which, every defensive coordinator, that's a dream. That's a dream for every defensive coordinator. And then you go on to the 3rd round and the 4th round. And you take Elijah Surratt in the 4th round, and you take Jacoby Lane from USC. A lot of experts, if you talk to them about Jacoby Lane, they will tell you he's a lot higher on their board than a lot of other people have him. And that is something that you just don't scoff at. That's an excellent move. That's an excellent decision. I love that for them. They did a great job, because the number one thing that we were complaining about with Baltimore is Lamar doesn't have the weapons needed to be successful. Because, again, they lost Likely this offseason. D-Hop is, I don't think D-Hop's with the team anymore, but you look at the roster of everything they have. They had Zay Flowers being their main guy, Rashad Bateman the second fiddle. They needed better options. And that's not a knock to Rashad Bateman, because he's very good. He's got a lot of experience. He's a veteran. But they needed younger talent and the best guys to get in. Jacoby Lane, I like the explosiveness on this kid. He's a deep threat all the way. And then Elijah Surratt, another guy. You could play him on the outside, could play him inside. I like the flexibility on him. The guy was a star at Indiana. He's going to be a star in Baltimore. So you've just completely revamped the wide receiver room, added a guard for your O-line to help keep Lamar upright and hopefully keep him healthy. And that just kind of changes every kind of perspective I had entering this offseason about the Ravens. They had to execute these things right. The right coach is one thing, but you have to get the right personnel. And they're grabbing the right personnel, and that is what's turning things around for them. Obviously, after everything that happened with the Max Crosby situation, I was out on them. But I'm totally back in with this draft. This draft is pulling me back into potentially the top team in the AFC North. That's not a debate for me. I originally had it the Steelers were just that much better, just that much. But now that has changed. I think the Ravens have now surpassed the Steelers based off this draft class. And that's not to say the Steelers didn't do good either. They made some great picks in this draft. But the Ravens hit exactly the points that everyone has been complaining about for the last year. And now the fun begins. The question now, what does the coaching staff do with the personnel they have in their hands? Can they continue to build on a winning culture and get back to the playoffs and win the division on top of that? And maybe, just maybe, in Jesse Minter's first year, they could get to the conference championship and potentially the Super Bowl afterwards. Obviously a hard path. You got guys like Buffalo, New England, Kansas City's definitely rebounding. You got Denver, the Chargers, the Jaguars might kick it up a notch. The Texans had a solid draft too. There's just too many teams there to really make that declaration now. but I can at least say that Baltimore is going to be competitive once again. And that is all that matters. And last but not least, the last top performer I have. Obviously, a lot of other teams had some solid, great drafts, but only one team has stood out to me to fit in this top 3 group, and that is the New York Giants. Yeah, listen, hold your breath. I know, y'all are holding your breath on that, but I'm going to give you the reason why. I talked about Arvo Reese earlier. People wanted Sonny Styles instead, or Caleb Downs, one of the two. I didn't think they needed both of them. They could have used one or the other, yes, but Arvell Reese is your good coverage guy, your guy that can stop the run, your guy that can float all over the field, play multiple roles. I like a fluid option like that, and they give so much more flexibility to the defensive coordinator to create so much more confusion for the defense. For opposing offenses too, obviously. Creates so much more confusion for the opposing offenses through this defense. And that's what I like about this ad. Arvell Reese doesn't have a natural fit in this role, in this defense. Yes, I know that. But I do know that you can fit him in any role. You can create a role for him. That is what it means. Because remember, we constantly see it all the time. Defensive players come into this league that change the game and they create new positions for them. And I like this pick for the Giants for that reason. This guy isn't just a game changer. He is a trend setter. He's going to set a new trend for defensive coordinators and future defenses in the NFL. You just wait and see what this guy does. I love that pick for them at 5. Then you get to 10, the argument obviously with Mawanoa. I get it. I was like half and half on that too. But the more research I did, the more I understood. The concern was the back. And that's why people were very iffy on him. That's why Fano went before him, I think. But also, this guy, to me, is the top tackle in the draft. And he also has the capability to be swung into guard and be a really good cornerstone lineman as a guard or either a tackle. You can use him in both ways. And I like that flexibility for the Giants because they do have great tackles already and some good guards. Fully on board with that. Fully on board with it. Not even an exaggeration. I love it. I want more of that. And so the Giants make some good picks there. Then obviously they make some trades happen. They got to move around a bit because they want to maximize on the top end talent. So you get to the second round, you get Colton Hood. Dude, Colton Hood was supposed to go in the first round. You got him in the second. That's an excellent pick. And that's also a huge steal too. Mind you, that is a huge steal. Now they address a huge concern people had about getting a corner and addressing the secondary. Yeah, it's not Caleb Downs. But it is Colton Hood, who's one of the top 5 corners in this draft, who's going to be a guaranteed to me star in 5 years from now. Yeah, you could take it to the bank. 5 years from now, he'll be a star. He's just that good, unless the coaching staff fails him, obviously. But regardless, great pick by them. And then follow that up. Yeah, that massive trade in the 3rd round that got them back in to take Malachi Fields from Notre Dame. There's so many beneficial things that come from his game that are going to turn around and change the identity of this offense that are going to complement elements of the game for Neighbors. And Neighbors can help him develop. And you also got more weapons for Jackson Dart. That's the priority, isn't it? You want to maximize Jackson Dart's window with the team. And in order to do that, you got to grab the talent necessary. So now you have him, you now have Fields together with Malik Neighbors, and you also have the options of either Calvin Austin or Darnell Mooney, who both have similar playing styles. I like that pick. The offense has been transformed. It's been made more complete and more dangerous and more volatile. I like that for them. They didn't need the running back. They had Scadaboo. I didn't buy that for a second. Scadaboo was their guy. And they're going to use a hard ground and pound game with him, and they're still going to lean on the running backs they have in their room because they know that they're speedy, twitchy, and it's going to help them as well. So good compliments for the action. So I love this draft for them. Obviously, I don't care much for anything after that. They had 3 6s after that. Bobby, Jamison, Travis, J.C. Davis, Jack Kelly. Those are all really development guys. They may not have they're not going to be starters, but these are guys that can earn roles in depth or potentially on the practice squad, however you name it. They top half of this draft for them, the way they leverage their lesser picks to come up higher to get higher end talent, that's what impressed me, and that's what made me so happy about what the Giants did in this draft. They were just that good. And I'm very happy for them because they knew what was the priority here. Get the best talent in the draft so that we can get back on track fast because the NFC East, Cowboys are getting better. The Eagles are getting better. JD5 is about to have a healthy year with the Commanders in DC. You need to get back in there and get competitive again. A pick like these, picks like this are going to make you competitive again. I wouldn't be surprised if these Giants end up being a 7 or 8 win team. I'll be very honest with you. That's right now for me, currently their floor. Their floor is a 7-win team. That's their floor. And that's not a terrible floor. It's way better than this past year. But that's my floor. I think ceiling-wise, they could be a wild card. No joke. I think they could be a wild card team. The only thing they just have to work on is probably just bolstering up that D-line a little bit more since they traded away Dexter Lawrence. But I like where they're going. I like the direction they're headed. There's a couple things they're going to have to tweak. But I do think overall in this draft, they did exactly what they had to do, and they leveraged their picks to get better talent at their disposal. So that's some of the best performers, the Ravens, the Raiders, and the Giants, 3 teams I really liked. What about the worst performers? Who stood out as the worst? And when we really look at it, there were some bad performers. And some are notable. Some of them are really under the radar, floated. Like, if you really nitpick it, you'll see that they are not great drafts. So let's start with the most obvious one, the most glaringly obvious one that everybody has been bringing up constantly. The LA Rams. And the reason why I'm bringing up the Rams, if you haven't seen it already, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's been something in the cycles of the news for days. The Rams picked at number 13 Ty Simpson. And Ty Simpson was going to be traded. Teams were going to trade back into the first round potentially to draft Ty Simpson because there was a lot of liking to him. However, at 13, using that pick to get him was not great. And that's just my personal input. If you're going to do that, you're better off trading back and then picking him because there's nobody that's going to really leapfrog in front of you for that. That was my belief with Ty Simpson. They could have got a little bit more because given that, they only had 5 picks in this draft by the end of it. And one of those is spent on Ty Simpson in the first round. That's more of where my problem is. It's not the fact that Ty is a development project who needs to sit for a few years. The problem I have with this draft is that they didn't have many picks to begin with, and they wasted the most valuable one on a guy who's going to have to sit and wait for 3 years. Could Ty Simpson have a Jordan Love type of career and potential success? Yes, I think there is that window there when you're led by an MVP QB who is going to be a Hall of Famer that's won a Super Bowl. Yes, I think that is just very possible. But this is not something you take in the first round. At least when it was the Packers when they did it. It was later in the first round where you could realistically pick them. In this case, that was not happening. This guy, there was no kind of hyper traction that he was going to pick by somebody in this round unless somebody traded back in. So the Rams taking him just didn't sit right with me. But then after that, you get into the second round, you take a tight end. Fine. You get Max Clare. Claire's solid. He's one of the best in the draft. I get it. He's no Eli Stowers, and he's not, Kenyon Sadiq, who's now with the Jets. But he is very solid, and he's going to play a very important role in that offense. But beyond that, Keegan Trost from Missouri. I don't know how he's going to perform. He might be a swing/backup guy. We don't know what he's going to be. So realistically, after that, you get C.J. Daniels in the 6th round. You get Tim Keenan in the 7th. Keenan has starting potential as like a rotational option. But when we look at a guy like C.J. Daniels, I don't see that upside. So realistically, you grabbed 3 guys that are going to start, or at least 2 guys that are going to start, and 2 guys that are either going to be rotational or depth pieces. And you got 1 guy who may not even make the roster. And when I go through that information, when you only had those 5 picks, that tells me you didn't maximize on the value that was available. And you ended up wasting your most valuable pick on something that could have waited. But that's okay. The Rams know what they have with Stafford. They do have a pretty solid roster as it is going into this year. And, there's not too many concerns for them in the first place. Like, they're going to fight in this West to win the NFC West and make a Super Bowl run. They are one of the most terrifying teams still in the league. But wasting one of those picks, which affects your future, that could be considered for me a negative. And, I think a lot of the fans in the league felt the same way. But now we have to get to the second team because the Rams were glaringly obvious, but this next one wasn't so obvious. Staying on the theme of the Western divisions, let's go to the AFC side and take a look at the Denver Broncos because the Broncos... Oh, man, they must really think they're going to win the division again next year. Oh, it's so nice to see that. Not knowing that, the Chargers are improving. That the Raiders are taking the next step right now. They're in the process of taking the next step. And then the Chiefs, when Mahomes comes back healthy, is going to be a very dangerous team once again, especially since they had a very good draft. And what did you do? You didn't pick until the third round. And that wasn't because you didn't have a pick in the second round. It was by choice that you wanted to pick in the third round. You waited till the third round. You get Tyler Onyedem, who I think is going to be pretty solid. I'm not nervous about him at all. I think he's pretty good. But, after that's where it gets shaky. You get Jonah Coleman from Washington in the fourth round. Cage Casey also in the fourth round. The tackle from Boise State, who could potentially start, but got to do a lot of work with him. And then you go through, and then you just keep going from there. Justin Joly, not a starter, rotational guy. You go to Miles Scott from Illinois, development guy. Don't love that. And that was in the seventh. Dallin Bentley, Red Murdoch, Mr. Irrelevant. These are not quality picks. The first one was quality. Getting Onyedem, he's probably going to start on the D-line. I'm okay with that. Jonah Coleman. There's no spot for him in this roster, I think. I don't think there's any spot in this roster for him where he's going to get valuable reps. I don't see it. And then same deal with Cage Casey. I like Cage Casey as a player, good person. How you develop him is going to be very important. And if the O-line coaches do not do a good job of handling him and getting him ready to play and start, it's going to be a slippery slope. It's going to be a very, very rough road for him. And it might be a while. He may develop, he may not. And then if he doesn't develop, he's off the team in 3 years. And then at that point, you just wasted a fourth-round pick, unfortunately. And everybody else is just, there's not any serious value that makes me sit here and say, well, they did pretty good. No. Like, it feels like a good amount of these are just stretches. Guys that will be on the roster, guys that may not be on the roster. There's a lot of 50-50 guys here. And then it's just really the top three that I think are pretty much locks. And on top of that, just they could have done more. They didn't have to leave the second round. But they did because they wanted to stockpile in the back end and they thought they could get their guy later, which, yeah, Onyedem's great, but waiting is ridiculous. So I think they could have picked him anyway. They could have kept better capital still. They would have been fine. But they decided to bypass all that and give up a little bit of value that they had in those mid-rounds for that in exchange. So that was really where my issue was with Denver. For some people, they didn't see much wrong with it. For me, I think they could have done a lot better not having made trades. But that's okay. Denver, again, coming off an AFC West championship year, made it pretty far, made it all the way to face New England, just to lose to New England, who would then go on to win to the Super Bowl. They didn't win. The Seattle did, but they became the AFC champs. Denver lost Bo Nix right before the championship game, and that cost them in that terrible weather game. But I digress from that. They were one game away from the Super Bowl last year. They're still a very good team. They're still a very strong team. One of the best defenses in the league, if not the best. But they really need to evaluate their options. They really need to keep a very close eye on their young talent because eventually you're going to start seeing the contract numbers dip to 1 year, 2 years. You're going to have guys that have option years coming up, and you're going to have to do something about it. So for this year, you might be okay. But what about after that? What about after that with your defense? How long can you keep everybody happy? No way to know. How much can we trust that Bo Nix is going to come back and still have that same level of explosion and versatility that he brings to the Denver offense beyond just his arm? He can move, he can run. Can he still have that same benefit when he comes back from injury? Is it going to be the same? Because typically with injuries like he had, it's going to take a while. There's just a lot of risk involved. I don't love it. There could have been much better choices for them, but I think their need to trade is really what killed their draft stock and the value of what they got back. That's just my 2 cents on it. I'm not the perfect expert, but I just didn't love it personally. But there is one other team that I think is glaringly obvious. They didn't do too good. And I don't think anybody else is shocked that they didn't do good either. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Oh, gosh. I know it shocked everybody on day one when they took Caleb Banks at 18, who was going to be a second-round pick. I don't want anybody telling you otherwise. There was no one. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Like, I will, cross my heart, whatever. He was not going in the first round. No other team had their eye on him in the first round. Second round, a different story. But in the first round, no. Minnesota felt it was better to take him then. So they did. They took him at 18. And he's a great talent. If it wasn't for the couple flags that came up, he probably would have been a first-round pick. But they took that shot on him and in the first round, and we'll see if it benefits. D-line is a need for them, yes, but it wasn't the main need. And then mid-draft, they trade Jonathan Grenard to the Eagles. Lord have mercy, what have you done? Isn't there a rule? I feel like we need a league-wide rule here. Don't trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. Why? Because you're going to lose the trade. 9 times out of 10, you lose the trade. Just how it goes. And what happens as a result? Philly keeps winning the division. Philly keeps going back to the playoffs. They keep fighting and ending up in the Super Bowl somehow. We don't need that trend to continue, people. We need more diversity and competition in the NFC. We don't need everything to be washed out by Philly and LA and Seattle. We don't need that. We need more variety. We need the Chicagos in it. We need the Atlantas in it. We need Tampa Bay in it. We would love to see an Arizona in it. We want to see a Washington in it. Maybe a Dallas, who knows, depending on how you feel about them. But we don't want to see the same competition constantly dominating the conference and getting there. So why are you helping the people that constantly dominate and get to the playoffs get better? That's what I don't understand. But they made the trade. They get rid of Grenard. I know he didn't want to be there. That's one thing. You know, they had a deal in place. He was gonna go. That's fine. I go through everything else. I'm tired. I'm just tired of everything else. Jay Golday, a valuable linebacker. He'll be great. Dominique Orange, he'll be solid. I go through everything else here with Caleb Tiernan. And with Tiernan, I think he's going to be good too. They got a lot of good starters early on. After that, Jacoby Thomas, iffy. Max Bredesen, who drafts a fullback in the 5th round? I don't know. They did. That's my point. Charles Demings, Damon Claiborne. I like Claiborne. Probably going to be a situational guy. Not real any starter value there. Maybe backup. He's probably going to be like a running back 3. And then you get to Gavin Gerhardt at the 7th round. 7th rounders don't typically end up starting. That's the deal. Go through the whole list. The top half, starter quality, that's it. That's all we have. The bottom half, right around the 3rd round is where my issue is. Around the 3rd round, late 3rd, that's when things fall apart. And you need consistency. And so when you take a risk at number 1 with your 1st round pick, and then it starts dipping, it starts getting worse as you go in terms of starting value, and you have to maximize the value where they are, it just doesn't sit well with me. So overall, I think that pick at the 1st round derailed a lot of my opinion of them, and I think we're kind of starting to understand why Minnesota's drafting history hasn't been strong. I don't know how much it is on general manager, but we think there's got to be more to that story. It's just a shocker. I think Caleb will be good, but people are going to remember the fact that he went in the 1st round, not the 2nd, and that's going to be what's going to define his career, unfortunately. But we got through the best. We got through the worst. Who are the people that are going to be underrated? I'll give you a couple names right now.
So as we look about the draft in general and you start going through the board, you're going to find some names that sound familiar, or you're going to find names that don't sound familiar. The further down you go, the less familiar they're going to sound. But in my case, I found a lot of guys that I was familiar with, but I knew already about them and their tape and what was good about them, what wasn't. And also, for the majority of these guys, it's more about where do they end up that really determines exactly how they develop and if they're going to be a quality starter at some point. And most of the time, you're going to find that in the first 3 rounds. After that, you got to really pick and choose your guys. Just be very careful who you pick. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 3 guys that I feel are going to be super valuable picks here. Sleepers, completely just under the radar that nobody's really giving enough attention to. So let's go ahead and hit the first guy, and this is the one that I have heard this name a lot, and when we were live streaming this on Twitch, this was something that I really did like. This was a name I'd been liking throughout the cycle, and I'm bringing it up again because this is another guy that I really like, and that is Jake Slaughter, the center from Florida. Doing the whole run-through of the centers in this draft, the interior offensive linemen, I found guys like Trey Zune who were going to be really good. I found other centers that looked like they were going to be really good, and some guards, but in this case with Jake Slaughter, he was more unique to me because he tested really, really well. And what I mean by that is this guy comes out to about 6'5". He's about where you want to be in the terms of percentile for height. 6'5", 303, a little overweight, but not too bad. Then you get to the hands. Hands are a little undersized. His wingspan, it's good. You get to the arms, he's got short arms. And that's another thing. That's why you get moved inside when that happens. But for his case, that's not a terrible thing. What was more impressive to me is this guy runs a 5.1 40. He runs a 1.74 10-yarder, which is a huge thing for O-linemen to be able to do that kind of stuff. And more impressive, his vertical and his broad jump were way further ahead than people had. This guy was going 32.5 on a vert and 110 on like an 11 on a broad. This guy was good. This guy had a lot of power in his lower body. And that is a good thing because for O-linemen, you want that power in your lower body to help you sustain with a good base. And when you got a solid base, that's very beneficial. The Chargers end up getting this guy, and we're talking about a 3-star prospect here. A guy that was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school, and you go through everything else with this guy. He's anchoring, he's outstanding in pass protection, got really good core strength, good hip sync against power. That goes back to, again, through his lower body. Processes the game quickly, sees stunts pre-snap, and is able to adjust protections without hesitation. So he's able to literally lead the offensive line on what he's seeing. Gets real push in the run game when he's able to catch defenders with the hands inside cleanly. Finishes blocks with intent, climbs up second level, good effort, good urgency, good timing, everything matters there. That's a big deal. And then you keep going through these other great things for him. He pulls a lot cleaner than expected for a center that's at 305, and he stays balanced through moving targets. Got really good knee bend, low pad level, understands leverage through reps, and he started every game over the last 2 seasons and hasn't missed time against physical SEC fronts, which is a big thing. He was with the Gators. When you're with the Gators, you're going to get a lot of tough competition because it's the SEC. Any guy that comes out of an SEC or Big Ten school is battle tested, and that has to be understood. Both of those guys, anybody who comes from one of those schools is battle tested, and that's why a lot of those guys end up getting drafted or getting another look. And that's what happens in that time. A guy from, let's say, Ohio State who's a center, or a guy that's from Missouri as a center, are going to get a second look over a guy who's from Charlotte who's a center. The guy from Charlotte would have to have really good tape, 1, and 2, show really good fundamentals and physical stuff in general to show that he's worth a draft pick. For a guy who's from Ohio State or Wisconsin or coming from Kentucky even, a center from those spots, they are going to get the second look because of the competition they played. For the Charlotte guy, that wouldn't be the same situation. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here. But for him, 2-time captain, handled all the line calls, set standard through prep and effort. This guy was a leader. He's a leader on the line, and he does a very good job of that. And he's also very good for his size, and we love that. The only downsides they can work on are all things that can be coached up, which is, starting 1, leaning on his hands against quick counters instead of just chopping the feet to stay square. He lets the defenders disengage late in the play when the QB extends beyond the design. So that means he basically just lets them go. When the QB abandons his post, he tends to just let go and let defenders work. And that's a problem. He also has an issue sometimes getting to the 3 techniques who are a little faster than him, have a quicker first step, and that is on stretch plays when they try to shoot the gaps hard. And so when they go and try to attack the gaps intense with speed, that's when things can get a little shaky for him, but that's a little just a bit of an adjustment through his step. That's just a little thing you can do there. He also tends to be too aggressive on stunts and lunges at times instead of trusting just the footwork and staying patient. And then one more thing really, which is something it's just a little nitpicky thing I've seen some people bring up, could use more mass in his lower half. Basically, he could be a little heavier. And that's just so he can hold up better against pure power on bull. Because if he gets bull rushed with a guy that's a lot heavier, it may not end well. But overall, I think this guy, pass protection wise, he's ready for the job. He's ready for the league. Run game, he shows a lot of great stuff. Just about NFL ready. Just got to definitely tweak a few things. But everything that there is, he's coachable. He's ready. This is a guy for the Chargers who are coming off a year where the O-line was one of the worst performances on the team. Actually, in all of football last year. They were one of the worst O-lines in football. And again, not entirely their fault. It's really not. They did have a lot of injuries, especially at the tackle spot. And they were rotating constantly O-linemen, different alignments and lineups just because they couldn't get consistent starters out there. And that was the issue because of the medical problems. So in this side of things, You're going to grab a center who will be a starter at some point, who has a lot of potential to grow. He might need maybe a little bit of time here to sit and learn, but I really do like what Jake Slaughter brings to the table. And for a team like the Chargers who need offensive line support, this guy is a name you're going to want to remember because he could quickly get into a starting role there and become one of the best centers in the game. You just got to keep a very close eye on him. I got a lot of hope and faith in this kid, and I think y'all should too. Let's get to the second guy I have on the board. We're going to stay on the trend of offense really quick. Next pick I have here up in line is Nick Singleton. And the reason why I'm going running back here is because of what Singleton was before the year started. Nick Singleton was projected to be a early pick. I'm not exaggerating that. If you go back to what the discussions were before this season hits for Penn State, this disaster season that saw the dismissal of James Franklin mid-season, you would understand why we were looking at Nick Singleton a lot closer. And this guy ends up going in the 5th round to Tennessee, who, again, heavy arguments that they should have got a running back in the 1st round with Jeremiah Love. But they never had the chance. Arizona was locked in. They never were going to have that opportunity. And there wouldn't be another running back that could be like Jeremiah Love. But there were guys going into this year who were super promising. And in this case, that would be Nick Singleton. And I think Singleton would be very, very good for the Titans system. Let me explain to you why. We look at Nick Singleton's numbers, okay? Height and weight are where they need to be. 6 foot, 219. His hands are under 10. Arms 31. Okay, he's like average in some categories. That's fine. He's consistent with what you were looking for. His 40 time was a 4.39. His 40 time was a 4.39 for a running back. That's very, very impressive in this class. That is super impressive because most running backs are around a 4.4 to a 4.5. But he gets under 4.4, so it's even better. And then his bench press, which we heard happened at his pro day, he's very strong. Pushed out 25 reps. That's a big deal for a running back. That means he's got a lot of power, a lot of strength. You got to like that from a guy like this. And that's what I'm optimistic on with Nick Singleton. Now, obviously, there's a couple questions about his blocking ability. Definitely not great in pass or run blocking, in my opinion. You're not going to see a lot of that from him. But very good receiver. Very good runner. Breaking tackles, a little inconsistent, but this guy, I don't have a single serious knock on him. I mean, we get through everything we have here. Keep in mind, he was considered the number 1 running back in his recruiting class back in 2022. 5-star prospect out of PA. This guy was supposed to be legit. And I think he kind of was. I think he kind of was, but it just, whatever happened in this last year really affected his stock, I think. So let's get started here. Let me just go over a couple strengths, couple weaknesses that really took down what he brings. You start with the strengths. Gets a top speed in a hurry, gets rid of pursuit angles once he hits that 2nd level. He has a 2nd gear that he could get to in order to push through after making initial contact in the backfield. So essentially, once he gets the ball in the backfield and he starts running, that's 1 speed. But he can get to the next one really quick and get to that top speed at a higher rate than most running backs can. He also runs angry through contact. He falls forward. He's tough to bring down at the goal lines. This is a good goal line guy. For the Titans, they need a guy like this. Pollard, a lean dude. You're not going to get that from him. Same deal with Tyjae Spears. Neither one of those guys are power guys. They're more speedy guys and more elusive. And I think for Spears, he's more balanced in a way. With this guy, you're getting a guy that has receiving ability that can run through contact. And I really do like that in a running back. A guy that can have those qualities is huge. He does have soft hands out of the backfield. That drop rate ended up improving for him as a receiving back over these last 4 seasons. And then he also squares up blitzers with real intent and pass protection. He doesn't hesitate picking up that free runner. And we want to see those kind of commitments. If the running back commits like that, he wants to take on contact. He wants to pick up the block. That's huge. And that's something you don't obviously see. He also knows how to press the hole, 1 cut, go. Super decisive, especially in zone runs. We want to see more of that. That's a good element to have in your game, a very important trait. Then we get to the weakness side, which is the problem. He doesn't make people miss. He's not an elusive guy that's going to go boom, boom, and just hit you hard like that. This is someone who's just going to be, if you watch the tape, he was more elusive when he was younger than he is now. For some reason, when he got there, he was more elusive. You get to this past season, and it's kind of disappeared. So he's not going to make people miss. And he's also just a straight line guy. Gets stiff when he's asked to redirect or chain cuts together in traffic. So this guy, out of the backfield. You're asking to round out, fine. If you're asking him to make some kind of crazy move to get free, he's not going to do that. That's fine. But there are a couple times when you're doing a gap scheme on the run game and he's just going to miss the cutback lanes more often than you want, and that's just going to leave yards on the table. That's just going to come down to coaching again. So the Titans run game, whatever the coach is in the run game coordinator, they're going to have to figure that out a little bit and try to get him on page to see, hey, listen, you could do this instead. Hey, you could do that instead. Let's look at this play. Let's just kind of lean on going to this guy's shoulder or that guy's shoulder. And then, you see that cutback lane. Let's just take that one step, dig a little sooner so you have more time to recover, and then get over and hit that lane more decisively and sooner so this way we don't have those issues. A lot of his numbers went from freshman year being stellar, one of the best in college, to quickly falling down over time. And one of the biggest ones is good examples of that is looking at his senior year longest run, which was only 59 yards. His longest run as a freshman was 87. So he was a huge home run threat. It seems like that element's left his game, which is not great. That's not a good thing to have. It's not good news. And that's something they're going to have to work on. And then what Kip typically attributes to that is the injuries. It's the injuries. He's had injuries. Even at the Senior Bowl this past year in January, he broke his 5th metatarsal. So now we got a pattern growing of injuries that are just affecting his burst when he digs his feet in to go in and get forward and get downfield. There's the problem in itself. So we have foot injuries that are nagging him. We've got a couple lower body things nagging him. That's really what's affecting his burst and power that we were looking at before in his run game. You watch the running back, his tape from 24. You see a guy who's got real third down ability. You watch the 25 tape, you got questions. The after contact production has dropped. The breakaway numbers cratered. You also look just through everything. Katron Allen, in the end, ended up actually overtaking him at one point. And you could just attribute that really to a coaching staff in transition, sure. But just, you really go through it, you have to ask yourself, if in 4 years of college play, along with nagging injuries that have affected him for the last 2 to 3 years, just have we started to see his explosive speed, his best trait, disappear? And he goes and runs a 4.39, by the way. He runs a 4.39. Beautiful. But the question is, the burst to get there, that second gear, does he still have it? Really, the variable in everything is just about that fracture in his foot. If that metatarsal fracture doesn't heal correctly, this guy's burst is out the window. It's out the window. So it's a huge medical risk. But the Titans are banking on this guy getting healthy. And if they're taking a 5th round pick on him, expecting him to be healthy, I don't know what to tell you. I think this is going to be a solid pick in the end. Because I do have trust in the Titans medical staff and in the coaching staff that Robert Saleh is building. I do think that they can find a way to be successful. And whether or not you want to believe me, that's up to you. But that's just my 2 cents on the issue. And that brings me to my final main sleeper pick. This was a pick that happened very late in the draft on day 3. And when it happened, I was very impressed. I was super tired, so I didn't give a really big reaction to this. But it was definitely, when I read the comps and the reports on it, I went, okay, we just may have made another massive mistake. Let's go talk about Philly. And I hate to bring up Philly again, but we got to talk about it really quickly. There's a pick they made in the 7th round. We get to pick number 251. We're at one of the last few picks in the draft in general. And what do the Philadelphia Eagles do? The Philadelphia Eagles go out and they draft a defensive tackle from Nigeria, which doesn't, really ring too many bells until you realize why they did it. Uar Bernard is a part of the international player program, and he has never played organized football before. He is just a raw athlete. That is all he is. He is a raw athlete. So why in the world did the Eagles take him at 251? That's your first question. 21 years old, from a small village in Nigeria. He's from the Player Pathway program. This same program produced Jordan Mailata, who, if you know that name, you should. If you don't know that name, you should. One of the best offensive linemen in football, especially at his position in the NFL. offensive tackle for the Eagles. They've already invested in this program before. They're doing it again. Mailata they did through Australia. He went in the 7th round 2018. He's already been an All-Pro. He got second-team All-Pro back in 2024. So we're talking about a program that's already produced something beneficial for the Eagles, and they found another gem, and they said, why don't we try it again? First off, shout out to him. He thanked God for the opportunities, and I love that for him. And that's what we want to hear more of, in my opinion. I want to hear more of that, more often. But 6 foot 4.5, 306 pounds. So he's he's about the size of a D tackle you want. That's a pretty solid size. But when he first got to training for this opportunity, he was 295. He had 11 more pounds. He also had 11% body fat, 32-inch vertical, and a 9.4 broad jump. He goes to the HBCU showcase, the NFL's HBCU showcase, and he had 6% body fat. So he dropped 5 pounds of body. He dropped 5% of body fat. His vertical went from 32 to 39, and then his broad jump went from 9.4 to 10.10. 9.4 to 10.10. We are talking a 1.5 foot extra in the broad jump. And then on top of that, just to really drive home the point of how insane this is, whoever trained him is amazing, by the way. His 40-yard dash as a 306-pound tackle was 4.36. We got a guy that can run a 4.6, just about a 4.6 as a defensive tackle. Where are you finding these people? I can't even believe this. I literally, the most explosive athlete I've ever heard of. And plus, we're talking about the growth you got to have. He decided on this mid-January. You get to the HBCU showcase, which was, again, early April. He shows up. It's only been like, if you really do the math on it, we're talking just over 60 days, maybe 75? 75 days after starting the training and getting into shape for the showcase. He comes out with this. What are we doing? Oh, by the way, he showed up being there at 295. And came out with 11 pounds more of just muscle because he dropped 5% body fat. Because he's made so much progress in a short time, that's why the Eagles like this. And I like it too. And I like it because he's made a lot of improvement on a lot of things. He's very flexible, way more fluid. And this is kind of just a passion project to Howie Roseman. And that just makes sense because 7th round pick, you just want this guy to develop, sit, learn, see what we can get out of him. I'm telling you all right now, the comp for this guy athletically, physically, in terms of weight, size, everything he did in the 40, the jump, all of it. We're looking at a guy that measures up to Myles Garrett. You see how quiet that we just got? Yeah. We're looking at a guy who physically measures up to Myles Garrett. The difference is Myles Garrett's played organized football for a long time. And he did before he even got drafted. This kid has never played organized football. That's about to change. And if this guy is able to establish any of that power and muscle he has built now at this point, and it's able to translate into effective on-field performance in any type of way where he's able to compromise pockets quick, get to the QB from the inside, from a 1 technique, from a 3 technique, something like that, we are looking at the next possible generational defensive tackle. And he's picked in the 7th round at 251 when the draft was going to be over in another 7 or 6 picks. That, to me, is outstanding. And he's my next sleeper. I don't ever like giving Philly credit because it's just a personal preference given my fandom for my team. But they do deserve a lot here. They do deserve a lot of credit. And they do a great job here. And I love this pick for them. I hope this works out. Because the International Player Pathway Program has already showed off that they can do so much and that you can find gems. You can find guys that can be all-pros, that can be Pro Bowlers. You can find these guys. They are available. You just got to do the work and the research. That's it. And so we've reached the end of sleeper picks. So once again, Uwar Bernard, the Nigerian defensive tackle, has not played organized football. We've got Nick Singleton from Penn State, the running back, who had a really rough campaign this year, despite the fact that his previous 3 have been much better. It's mainly because of injuries, but I think if he can overcome those injuries and get that power and burst back, maybe there's a chance he could be the lead back at some point for Tennessee. And then the other one we said to start off this conversation of sleeper picks, we talked about Jake Slaughter with the Chargers. He's going to start at some point. He's going to start real soon. I really like him, and I think he's going to be very good in this league. And that's going to lead me to one of my favorite segments in general, the feel-good moment of the weekend. We want to talk about some of the feel-good moments. My number one feel-good moment is something that kind of hits a little bit more personal for me, because I've been talking about him for a long time, and to hear his name finally get called to draft, it made me so happy, because he is going to be one of the most amazing talents I've watched. And it's because he's such a trendsetter for a historic program in college football, and he finally gets his opportunity to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His name is Eli Heidenreich. Let's take a look at what his story is.
And Eli Heidenreich is here. You see the emotion hitting him. He is Navy's all-time leading receiver. He was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school. Valparaiso, Davidson, Slippery Rocket offered him finally his dream school. Grandfather was a naval officer. His uncle was a Navy corpsman and in the Marines. And Eli, now eligible with the new rules to defer his military service to pursue a career with the Steelers.
I got goosebumps right now, Reese. I do. Going into the draft, this timing is insane. This is my favorite player in the draft. Reese mentioned some of it. A running back, but only by position. The stats and positions right now compare nothing to what we're looking at. Tiers, the naval uniform, the hat, the theater here in Pittsburgh going absolutely nuts.
Nearly 1,000 yards receiving in this Navy offense this past year.
Well, Kyle mentioned that he had some Navy receiving records. This is my favorite stat of any prospect I had in the draft. He had 6 receiving touchdowns in 2024. No player in the Naval Academy's history has ever had more than that. One of the best players, no hyperbole, to come out of Navy in the last quarter century.
What do you think against Air Force? The 8 catches, 243 yards was a record. Unbelievable, 3 touchdowns. But he was utilized in different ways the way they would line him up. Kyle, you watched him.
I did.
Dynamic. I grew up on the Severn River. The banks of the Severn River Naval Academy.
That's right.
Naval Academy. Beautiful, right?
So Eli Heidenreich goes to the Steelers late in the draft. Now, the reason why I love this story is because, again, we're talking about a kid that comes from Navy. The Navy program. The Navy program is a run offense. That is what it is. All the military service programs outside of maybe Air Force are programs dedicated to the ground. They're going to run the ball all the time. Army's very famous for that. They made a whole brand out of it. You live by the run, you die by the run. That's how it works for them. For Navy, a little bit different. But they still leaned a lot heavier on the run. And they would throw, but not very often. With Eli on the team as the running back, in this case, we'll say running back, he was the leading receiver for Navy for program history as a running back. If that doesn't raise any kind of, alarm in you that this guy could be pretty good, I don't know. I don't know if you got one at that point. I don't know if your alarm is working. You got to go get it checked, because this kid is going to be really, really good. And I like a lot of his game, and I think he's got a great character, great head on his shoulders. I have an affinity for talking to the service program players. I talked to one a couple years ago, the last draft we just had before this, 2025, with another player who I felt was going to get drafted, who I think was super underrated in this process, Raywan Lane, the safety from Navy. He ends up going to the Jaguars, gets drafted there in the late rounds. I really liked him. He comes from a great family, great person, excellent character. I think he's a great human being. I think the same can be said for Eli here. And so when I see these service members come out, I always want to give them the extra attention, because these are guys who, they don't always get opportunities to play ball. They really don't. They end up having to have mandatory service and have to go serve active duty. And when that happens, that really hurts their chances to play football. And if you know anything about what happened back with World War II, when Vietnam, everything changed. Guys were leaving to go fight. Guys were giving up the game to go fight. And when that happened, It changed a lot. It changed my perspective on a lot of things. And, you know, this is why I appreciate when they get these opportunities. Because nowadays, they don't often get them. And they have to wait until they're done with their service to be able to do so. And even then, they'll be in the reserves. And they could still be called out to be doing active duty service. And when that happens, you don't have an argument in it. You get called, you go. That's it. That's the military. And so when Eli gets this opportunity like this, I love it and I get excited. I get really excited for him. And I'm very happy for him. And I think we're looking at a guy here that's going to have a Taysom Hill type of impact for this team. And I don't say Taysom Hill's name lightly. I don't say it lightly. I think this guy can do the Swiss Army things that Taysom Hill can do. The only thing obviously not being is quarterback, but he can play your running back. He could be your fullback. He could be your undersized tight end who could pull out as a lead blocker. You could also roll him outside, and you can make him be your receiver to fill in certain situations. This guy has all of those tangibles that you need in a guy that could be a Swiss Army player, and this is that guy. And it's funny because he's Navy, and we're saying Army. You know, Army, Navy, go Army, beat Navy, you know. So just the way that kind of, I like the flexibility options. I'm a fan of players that are flexible. They're not afraid to play another position, play out of position if they have to for certain plays. The more open you are, the more likely you're going to have a spot on my team. And that's just how it works for me. That's just my mindset. But the Steelers, they have some untapped potential on their hands. And they really need to take this very seriously with Eli. I don't think this is just some guy you picked in the third round just to, you know, fill your spot. This is a guy that's going to be very, very good. I don't have a debate in my mind that this guy is going to be great. And that's just my feel-good moment. I'm just very happy for him. It's a good moment. It's a happy moment to see for a kid who I thought was going to go earlier. He finally gets his name called late in the draft, and I'm happy for him. This was something that I've been waiting to see happen. He gets called. You know, it's a great feeling. And so that's the draft. That is the draft, the 2026 draft. Yes, we couldn't fully recap the entire draft, but I just tried to give you guys just some great teams who did really well, the teams who really fell short, and then just a few picks to really keep your eye on. Because these guys are going to be super underrated late in the draft. Most people don't watch day 3. But in this case, I'm giving you some day 3, day 2 guys to really keep an eye on that could, you know, change the game if they make it. If they develop right, if the teams coach them up right, they're going to be stars, future stars. And that's going to do it for the Brian Mansell Show. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I will see you all very, very soon. As I said, new episodes every Monday and Friday on Spotify and on YouTube. That's where you can check us out, the show, the Brian Mansell Show. You could also, if you want to keep up with any updates, any kind of social posts I got going on, go ahead. You can check that out on X at BAMansell and on Instagram at BAMansell_. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will see you all again on Friday.